안녕하세요. 매일매일 운동하기를 실천하고 있는 동탄 왕호입니다. 오늘은 무언가 하나 갖고 왔어요. 이게 뭐냐면은 마사지볼입니다. 마사지볼. 회사에서 줬어요. 회사에서 이런 걸 또 줬습니다. 마사지볼을 써보셨나요? 저는 TV에서만 봤는데 오 딱딱해. 저는 일단 TV에서만 봤습니다. 이 마사지볼이라는 거를 엄청 고통스러워 하던데, 저는 저거 뒤에 폼룰러 저것도 맨 처음에 썼을 때 정말 괴로웠어요. 이건 얼마나 더 괴로울지. 짠, 마사지볼입니다. 안 닦아도 되겠죠? 한번 닦고 올게요. 물티슈로 닦아야겠다. 짠! 요것도 회사에서 준 향균 소독 물티슈입니다. 에탄올 냄새가 장난이 아니에요. 에탄올입니다. 에탄올. 이런 플라스틱 제품 같은 경우는 사용하기 전에 꼭 한번 닦으세요. 잘 닦아줍니다. 와, 근데 진짜 아플 것 같아요. 그냥 돌이에요, 돌. 딱딱해요. 엄청 딱딱합니다. 이래서 사람들이 고통스러워했구나. 이 그림에 보면은 그냥 이렇게 문지르라고도 되어 있는데, 와, 근데 진짜 아플 것 같은데? 한번 해보겠습니다. 마사지볼. 저에게 어떤 고통을 안겨줄지. 이 날개뼈 이쪽이랑 제가 등이 항상 아프거든요. 자, 이걸로 마사지를 안 가도 되는지. 혹시 어떻게 하는 거지? 이제 들어야. 이거 안 되는데? 이거 아파서 어떻게 해? 그냥 돌이에요, 돌. 이거 어떻게 하는 거지? 그냥 이렇게 문대면 되나? 뭐가 좀 이상한데요? 뭐 어떻게 하는 거지? 이거 어떻게 하는 거지? 이렇게 누르면 되나? 뭐 영상을 찍기에는 뭐 하는 건가 싶죠? 지금 뭐야 이거 어떻게 하는 거야? 이거 어떻게 하는 거죠? 이렇게 문대면 되는 건가? 폼룰러가 짱인 것 같아요. 폼룰러가. 지압 효과는 이게 더 있는 것 같긴 한데, 이거 어떻게 하는 거지? 그냥 이렇게 몸을 들어 올리라고? 너무 아픈데 그럼? 이거를 안 되는데? 이거 이렇게 그냥 이렇게 있으라고? 와. 모르겠어요, 여러분. 느껴지십니까? 이 무게감? 정말 국소 부위에 사용하면 좋을 것 같아요. 하지만 전 그냥 이 폼룰러를 쓰겠습니다. 마사지볼은 다시 넣어 놓을게요. 나중에 필요한 사람이 있으면 줄게요. 이거 필요한 사람 저에게 카톡을 보내시면 제가 드리겠습니다. 마사지 볼이었습니다. 이제 운동할게요.
An image that is now written forever in U.S. history. An American fighter who devoted his life to human equality and the iconic bridge
이게
where he
훨씬 낫네요.
died for the cause. This is the casket holding the body of Congressman John Lewis crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama earlier today.
아닌가?
It's a
마사지
place
볼이 좀
of
더
deep meaning
시원한가?
in the story
국소
of
부위를
John
눌러주니까.
Lewis and an important part of the journey to his final resting place. Right now he's being honored by the state of Alabama and the city of Montgomery, where he will lie
아니에요.
at the state
저는 이
capitol
마사지
until
볼보다
tomorrow.
그냥 이
Then he'll be
폼롤러가
transported to the
더 나은 것
rooftop of the
같습니다.
US Capitol to lie in state before being laid to
여러분
rest
진짜
in Atlanta.
폼롤러 집에
One
하나씩
of
꼭
John Lewis's
사세요.
colleagues has found a
아이고야.
fitting way to honor the civil rights
아유
hero.
준수가
Tomorrow,
고맙다
the House
이거
Majority Leader
해가지고.
Jim
아유.
Clyburn will
아이고,
offer
아이고,
legislation
아이고,
to
아이고,
rename a House-passed voting rights bill after Lewis. The measure would restore a key part of the historic Voting Rights Act that the U.S. Supreme Court struck down in 2013.
와 지금 밖에 엄청 흐려요. 지금 아침 10시인데 엄청 흐립니다. 오늘 또 팔굽혀펴기랑 레그레이즈 위주로 할게요.
I never thought that I would see today when the United States Supreme Court would put a dagger in the heart of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I marched across that bridge on Bloody Sunday in Selma, Alabama, when people stood in unmovable lines, when people had to pass a so-called literacy test. People were asked to count the number of bubbles in a bar of soap, the number of jelly beans in a jar. My own mother, my own father, my grandparents could not register to vote simply because of the color of their skin.
But those 5 justices who said that was then, this is now, it's been 50 years, times have changed, and basically their argument is that all 50 states should be held to the same federal standards.
We have made a lot of progress. We've come a distance. But the question of race is deeply embedded in the American society. And we cannot sweep it under a rug or in some dark corner. The state of Alabama, the state of Mississippi, the state of Georgia, the 11 states of the old Confederacy and several other states, they selected themselves. They made a decision to, in a systematic, deliberate way, to make it hard, to make it difficult for African American and other minorities to participate in the democratic process.
Where do you go from here? So how do you fix this?
I think we need to meet with our leadership on the Democratic side as well as the Republican side and said, let's do what we did in 2006. Let's reauthorize the act.
You have the votes in the House, for example, there's a Republican majority there.
Well, in 06, we came together, Republicans and Democrats, and we passed it. Only 33 voted against the reauthorization. On the Senate side, not a single senator voted against the reauthorization of the act. And we can do it again.
You think you can?
We can.
In this current Congress?
We can and we must. The vote is powerful. It's the most powerful nonviolent tool that we have in a democratic society. We have to do it. We have an obligation to do it.
We need more leaders like him. Our deepest condolences to his family and his friends. May he rest in peace, and may his memory be a blessing.
어우 더워.
Inside Africa, in association with Zenith Bank.
This is the Namib, one of the world's oldest deserts. With mountain-like dunes stretching down to the blue waters of the South Atlantic, it is a land of extremes, renowned as much for its spectacular landscapes as it is for its wildlife. In southern Namibia, on the edges of the Namib Desert, one species stands as an icon for this wild beauty. These majestic animals that once roamed freely are now at risk.
If left on their own and unable to migrate as they are right now, I don't think they would be able to survive.
A year ago, scientists said only a single foal remained in this region.
There's probably a 50-50 chance that she's going to survive.
Today, as the world struggles with its own global health crisis, these enduring animals face their own, more elemental threat: drought.
Seeing horses disappear has been, you've got to steel yourself against that emotion.
This is a race against time to save the wild horses of the Namib. This is Inside Africa.
여러분 넷플릭스에서 빨간 머리엔 꼭 보세요. 빨간 머리엔 완전 재밌습니다.
Namibia is a land of contrasts, from its northern grasslands to its southern canyons, from magnificent wetlands to its sweeping desert dunes. It is also home to a well-developed network of parks, reserves, and lodges. And while Namibian law protects all the species found inside its national parks, a herd of wild horses that live in the dry southern stretches of the country continues to fight for its survival. Currently riding out the coronavirus in Cape Town, South Africa, Tegan Cuniff is the one photographer who has probably spent the most time documenting the plight of these wild horses.
I've been photographing the wild horses for quite a period of time, and I've seen them going through times of droughts and times of more grass and watching their behavior change. And photographing these horses and filming these horses has been a complete privilege. There's something about them which is very alluring. They're in this environment which is completely untouched and vast and stunning, with amazing light and beautiful mountains, and then these tiny horses amidst this. My all-time favorite is probably a photograph I snapped of two stallions fighting. It's just a moment that very few people get to witness out there, especially in a completely wild environment. It's so remote and untouched, and it was lovely just to be able to get that moment.
While she misses these rare photographic opportunities, what she misses even more is spending time with the person she credits for introducing her to their world. Telani Grayling first encountered these horses in 1992.
They were at that stage planning to capture some of the horses and sell them to the public. When we were here for 4 days during that capture, I think the horses captured me. There was just something about them that I wanted to study.
Talani is doing her research for, 24 years. She lived for a very long period in the desert just to observe the horses. She has done her PhD on the wild horses, and she knows the wild horse population like nobody else.
Talani's work monitoring the lives of these horses means she inevitably finds carcasses. When she does, she collects their skulls for study. A year ago, this was happening all too often.
There were 286 horses in the end of 2012. Before that, the population fluctuated. So during my study period, the lowest number is what we've got now, 74 horses, 32 mares and 42 stallions. The numbers have reduced due to the last couple of years, the drought and the hyena predation.
A hyena clan had hunted these horses for years as other prey disappeared. Defenseless against an increasingly aggressive predator, their numbers continued to dwindle. When a new foal was born last year, there was hope.
In the 2018-19 summer, only one foal survived the predation. We called her Zora. One of the risks is the hyenas. Another risk is the tar road and the car accidentally driving over her. There's other risks that she could eat something that is poisonous and she could die from that. So there's probably a 50-50 chance that she's going to survive.
While the tenuous future of this wild herd rested firmly on the small shoulders of a single foal, the story of how they got here led us to the deserted ghost town of Kolmanskop.
The diamond rush, which occurred here in 1908, changed this part of the world. Diamonds were discovered at Kolmanskop, and it had a huge influence of this whole southern part of Namibia here. Because there was such a need for horses, working horses, horses for recreation, for transport, in the mining fields.
Abandoned when diamond mining operations ceased half a century ago, Kolmanskop has been all but overtaken by the desert sands. Yet, Manny Goldbeck's research has shown that some of the original residents' ancestors live on.
Those photos show clearly, if you compare the horses from that time, more than 100 years ago, to the current horses which you find at Garo, that there are characteristics which are similar.
There is also another theory on the arrival of the horses that has its origins here in the desert at Garib.
The other theory is that the wild horses came in 1915 when the South African troops landed in Lütritz, and they landed with 6,500 horses and soldiers. There was a pilot here, Fiedler, and he flew over those horses and threw bombs down there. And obviously some of those horses scattered into the desert.
The restricted diamond mining area offered natural protection that allowed their numbers to grow. But in the late 1980s, parts of the area were fenced off to create a national park. It had a dramatic effect on both the wild horses and other wildlife.
Because now the horses as well as the game couldn't move to the east, and the east got a much higher rainfall. So they were now restricted to that area.
In the early 1990s, a long period of drought saw a number of horses die, setting off an outcry for action and a demand to save them. It's what brought scientist Tilani Grayling here.
Since I got to know the horses in '93, I've kept records of the population ever since. In 2012, I was part of a group that founded the Namibia Wild Horses Foundation to try and help the horses through public funding.
Ahead, searching for a sustainable solution. The fate of the herd and one baby foal may depend on whether humans and hyenas can figure out how to get along.
Thinking of banking in Africa? Think Zenith. In today's fast-moving, fast-changing world, you need a financial partner that understands your unique expectations. A bank with presence in major financial centers across the world, with the enabling platform to facilitate seamlessly, whenever, wherever, however. A bank with best-in-class financial solutions from a superb combination of technology and human touch for easy, fast, and secure banking that creates real value. Turning dreams into reality is now in your hands. People, technology, service. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
Oh.
business show, First Move. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley tonight.
Long before the coronavirus that the world is currently battling, a group of wild horses in a southern Namibia national park were fighting for their own survival. For more than a century, they have faced the constant threat of drought. But a decade or so ago, an elusive but highly effective predator started taking a heavy toll on the population: hyenas.
The problem is, if there were no predation, the horses would have been able to survive the drought, even if we didn't survive supplementary feeding. But with the predation combined with the drought, there was no chance for them.
Spotted hyenas would generally leave their den and hunt at night, often making their way to waterholes, where camera traps caught the inevitable showdowns. Incredibly efficient hunters, the horses had little chance.
In 2000, they took about 2 foals. Then it was quiet. 2003, they started coming in again and a little bit more often. During 2012, there were 50 foals born. By the end of 2012, the hyenas started predating on those foals. By the end of 2013, they were able to ambush and pull down an adult horse, which they didn't do before.
팔굽혀펴기 마지막 20개 한번 하고 끝내겠습니다.
2013 was 79 horses
힘들어요.
being predated on by hyenas.
In over 2 decades of following these horses, Talani Grayling has observed the spotted hyena predation up close and witnessed its devastating consequences.
They are very intelligent animals. That's why it's so difficult to dart them. They're not your average, straightforward, dumb animal like people think they are, or a scavenger. They are predominantly hunters.
In a lot of areas like Namibia, they are vulnerable for extinction. The estimates in 1998 was 2,000 to 3,000 remaining in Namibia. Now we estimate less than 1,000 remaining.
Carl Fester is a hyena researcher who works for Nankuse, a wildlife rehabilitation foundation based near the Namibian capital.
The rehabilitation work that we do is mostly with carnivores and other wild animals that come in conflict with humans here in Namibia.
In southern Namibia, the most significant threat